Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the studio for our conversation around the launch of the Global E-commerce Region Report for 2022. So this is one of our hotly anticipated benchmark reports where, having looked across the world at the markets in Europe, individual countries, LATAM, Middle East, Nordics, time to pull it all together and look at how the world has performed. This is very much about the context for e-commerce. We've already this year covered the Global Elite 1000, the top 1000 retailers and brands who are showing us how to do multi-channel retail globally. But this is very much a look at the market, the consumer, the citizens, the customers, what they're doing, and more importantly, what they expect from us as retailers. So it's a great pleasure to have in the studio today some lovely guests to discuss this with us. So we're pleased to have Jonathan, who's the report editor and has done all the hard work, who's going to share some of the insights with us, along with Virginie from Akeneo and Pia from Asendia. I thought it'd be just quite nice to show, in case you're thinking I don't recognize these people, this is how we present ourselves on LinkedIn. And of course, for Virginie and Pia, that's exactly how they look. For Jonathan and I, we've used photos from about 10 years ago. So you're probably thinking, who are these guys? It's obviously their fathers. No, it's us. So look, with no further ado, Jonathan, let's start with you first of all. Tell us a bit about the report and what you do, and then we'll hear from Virginie and Pia in that order. But Jonathan, just introduce yourself in case there is anybody who doesn't know you.
Yeah, sure. My name's Jonathan, as it says there. I'm the managing editor of RetailX, and what I also do is edit some of the larger reports over the year. So I kind of run the team on a day-to-day basis, but also do quite a bit of editing myself. This is, as Ian's already said, one of our biggest reports of the year. We look at, well, the global region. We look at literally worldwide figures. We then drill down through 6 separate regions: Asia, North America, South America, Middle East, Europe, and one other, which I will come up with later. And then we go down into more than 30 countries, and those range from e-commerce powerhouses such as the USA, and we'll also look at emerging markets, what's happening in Nigeria, what's happening even in Iran. And we also look at how can I put this? We look at the issues around e-commerce. What do people need to be aware of? These aren't necessarily the things that are going to affect your business tomorrow, but they will do in a couple of years' time. We're looking at issues and things that you should be aware of at a strategic level.
Great. Well, thank you, Jonathan. And you've picked a couple of those for us to look at today. Virginie, we've done a couple of webinars, but just in case people are thinking, where have I seen her before? Just give us a quick thumbnail and as well as telling us a bit about Akeneo as well.
Yeah, hello, Jan. Happy to be there with you today. So I'm Virginie. I'm an evangelist at Akeneo. For those who would not be familiar with what an evangelist is doing, basically I'm evangelizing, meaning spreading the word internally, meaning a lot of positioning and field enablement, mostly with our sales team, and externally, like today, taking part to a lot of conferences all over the world. And at Akeneo, we help customers, just basically gathering their product information in one single source of truth to be, better scalable, have always data quality of product information to be able to launch any new channel, sales channels that you would love to join. Like a lot of companies today want to sell on marketplaces. If you don't have that strong foundation first, that's a pity. It will take more time.
And one of my secrets, which I don't often get a chance to admit to, is I'm a massive fan of product information systems. And when we first came across Akeneo, I think about 4 years ago, I was struck by your new take on it. So for people who have grown up with these monolithic product information management systems, just share with us why Akeneo is a different breed in looking at the role of product information within multi-channel?
The real key differentiator at the very beginning was really we wanted to do a tool for business people, marketing people, basically the one who hates the tools, who hates ERP, e-commerce back office. We wanted to ease their life. So number one is really the user-friendly interface that we offer. And from a more technical point of view, we are really today in a composable approach, being part of the Mac Alliance. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but meaning that today it's not about just bringing a big monolith to do everything, but having the right tools to empower the right people at the right moment and to ease all the interaction. So
Great.
the best of breed approach really is a key differentiator today.
That's it. Lovely. Well, welcome. Lovely to see you again. Now, Pia, your logo is a familiar part, especially in Europe, because since we've been doing the European e-commerce reports, you've partnered with us on those and also with the e-commerce foundation for years before. But in case people aren't familiar with the bright yellow logo and what you do, just give people a thumbnail, introduce yourself and tell us as well a bit about Asendia, please.
Yes, gladly. Thank you so much for having me. So finally, it was my turn. I know, as you said, Asendia has been taking part many times, but it's the first time for me. So I'm Pia Elster. I'm responsible for communication and strategy within Asendia Nordics and Benelux. And I also work closely with head office on different topics. So Asendia is a logistics provider, you can say, supporting retailers abroad. So we have bespoke delivery solutions to many countries. So we ship to, I think it's over 200 countries. Asendia is a joint venture between Swiss Post and French La Poste. Mm-hmm. And we are, I think, represented in 70 countries nowadays.
Wow.
So yeah, we're growing.
Well, 70 countries and still growing. So superb. So listen, one of the reasons I'm very pleased to have you both here is, of course, the one of the truths you can't get away from in multi-channel is that we need to present our products to the consumer so they can buy, and then they need to be able to get the products and send them back across border increasingly and internationally. So I'm looking forward to your insights on that. But before we go there, we should just remind ourselves of the lovely report. Now, I know that our participants today are thinking, we're so excited, we want to have the report. Why haven't I got it yet? And the simple reason is it's coming out in a couple of days. So let's treat this as a preview. The good news is that just by being on this webinar with us, you are guaranteed that you will get your copy, and we will mail you the copy as soon as it arrives. So we don't want to spoil all of the surprises. So today, what we want to do is pick up on a very quick overview of the global trends. Spoiler alert, e-commerce and multi-channel are growing and are more important, but we'll say why. And then we want to pick up on a couple of things that Jonathan and our guests have drawn out as useful for strategic insight. So maybe, Jonathan, why don't you just kick us off then and just take us through the overall metrics and size of the market. It looks like all needles pointing north.
Basically, yes. I mean, these are the overall metrics for all of the countries that we track. If you look at the percentage of internet users, it's interesting that people are almost beginning to stop logging that. And I think that's because even in developed countries now, you're heading up towards such a high percentage. And the assumption is that eventually you're going to get 90+ percentage of internet users in all countries around the world. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things, though, is that as yet they don't all shop online, but that is growing steadily, and I find that really interesting. And there was a jump during the pandemic, but it's more, nevertheless, it's still a case of steady growth, I think, and I think that will continue for quite a while yet.
And so in Europe, of course, we have Eurostat. So we are still reporting on internet users. But for the global report, I think this is the last year we'll be showing that. And I think the move now is less about do you have access to the internet, but do you have access to stable broadband in order to do more and more online. And equally, in Europe, one of the things that we cover there is the age and generational adoption gaps. Because I think this is when more or less everyone could be online. It's a case of questioning more who's online and what they're doing with it. And if we look in a bit more detail at that, we're already tracking the customers by their age or generational identification. So I think for the first year this time, we've shown how the Gen Alphas are creeping into being economically of interest to us.
Yeah, and also when I look at that, I see that the numbers on Gen Z now, it's a very different attitude to, say, the baby boomers. I'll also mention in passing here that you would not believe the controversy here about what particular age group do people belong in. Nobody wanted to be a boomer in our office, I can tell you.
No, and we did actually decide that we maybe had to change the definition so that none of us were boomers, but we've decided to keep with actual fact. And these age definitions are from the United Nations. So if anybody is hating on us, please do write to the Secretary General directly rather than to us. But I know, Pia, when we were talking about this generation analysis, you were pointing up the importance of Gen Z and how a lot of their expectations were driving some of the requirements of retailers. Maybe just let me ask you to relate.
Yeah, so I think it's a well-known fact that this is the biggest generation we have, and it's clearly shown also in the statistics. So, and again, clustering people into generations or countries or regions might be. I mean, that's common, but it's not always very easy because we have individual demands and requirements, etc. But I think one general opinion about the Gen Zs is that they are requiring quite a lot from society and from companies in general. They are fully focused on ESG, and they expect transparency, and they expect us to treat their personal data with care and all that. So this is it's a nice opportunity, but it's also a challenge, I think, for retail in general to please them and to be able to deliver on these demands. We have to practice what we preach, I think, and deliver according to their needs and requirements. I think that's important. Not easy, but important to keep in mind.
Yeah, from a policy perspective, I think what's interesting as well is that these consumers are also voters, and so it's a lot of their expectations that are driving policy changes. So if you look in Europe, California, other parts of the world where privacy is important, you mentioned sustainability, absolutely vital. Now I'm going to jump slightly because visually one of the things that you drew out was the importance of sustainability. And you had an example here about how even at a product level, it's very important to bring that sustainability to life. So let me just share a screen capture you'd had and just talk us through how the transparency and product work together here.
Yeah, this is an example of our customers. And exactly as you said, Pia, they really target, because they are their consumers, the young generation and the Z generation, who really want absolute transparency, and they will be more willing to pay more for a product they know everything about. So for each product, you have really the impact, not only the carbon impact of each component, but also the price composition, how the price is made. And they compare that to traditional price where you could find the same exact t-shirt more expensive. They explain also how they rationalize and standardize the price. So they explain everything. You can also visit the factory thanks to videos and so on. And really it engages more than consumers, but the community they are building and growing with. So this has an impact. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting what you say, because it's easy to get stuck on the sustainability part, but they also have, which any one of us should have, basically high ethical and moral standards, right? So as you say, they want to visit the manufacturing plants, etc. So you can't hide behind any nice words. Right.
Well, this is the challenge of transparency, and I think from a retail perspective, especially if you're selling other people's brands, is you become responsible for your promises and for the promises the other brands are making. And Jonathan, in your research, you drew out this chart that you were quite keen to talk about, which is looking at the consumer's demand for sustainable products as well as their willingness to pay. Just explain why you drew this out.
We have a whole feature and a whole section written by our sustainability editor, Emma. And this jumped out at me because if you look at the top of the left-hand chart there, consumers willing to pay a sustainability premium, China, I think the figure there is 52%. Mm-hmm. And then you look at how much the premium they're willing to pay, it's something like 24%, I think. In the USA, the figure is 42%, but people will pay a premium of 37%. I just found that really fascinating as a way of putting what are people prepared to pay for sustainability? And what fascinated me about this was actually we're beginning to see the raw figures for that now. We're beginning to see what people will do, and perhaps I suspect that if we drill down into that, we'd find some quite interesting things about generational attitudes as well. But it was just a fascinating way of, it can sound very fuzzy and warm, sustainability. Actually, there are numbers here, and you need to be aware of the numbers.
Mm. We saw a lot of this as well with the grocery research we did, where consumers are talking about how important sustainability was to them. And the consumer was telling us, if our grocer isn't sustainable, we will leave them. Mm. But then we also researched how often people actually did leave their grocers, and the answer was basically never, which didn't make sense. But when we drilled into it, what was coming through was that they were swapping products within the aisle. So you would keep your grocer, but you'd be walking along the aisle thinking, I will swap from brand A to brand B because it's more sustainable, or I will drop it because. And so again, it comes back to this idea of, even on your product packaging, on your product landing pages, in your marketing, you have to be the product that makes clear your values, your provenance, and so on. And I think, Virginie, this is something that you must be seeing a lot.
And that's why, Jan, for me, the challenge is really for companies to avoid what we call greenwashing. Just saying that you care, you have your values and so on. But there is nothing worse than actually being blind with the product information. So, a lot of companies used to have this kind of web pages to showcase their value, to highlight that. But then in the product information, nothing. People want more, as Pia said. They really want to know about that. And, we talk about e-commerce, but that's the exact same in store. You don't have seen so many people today, looking at the tag in the clothing, in everything. People really look at that now. So it's not only on e-commerce, but physically too.
Yeah. And Pia, from your perspective, it's very easy to make claims on a website, but yet we're physically moving products around the world across border. To what extent are you seeing from both the customer and from retailers a pressure or expectation around being visibly and provably more sustainable or less harmful?
Yeah, well, we're in the industry, as you say, international logistics. So we are the bad guys, mainly, transport.
Or the good guys.
Across the world. So what we are doing is compensating for all our carbon emissions. So we are 100% carbon neutral, which is fine, absolutely, but it's not enough, obviously. So we also need to look into the reduction part, like all companies, because there is no planet B, right? So if we don't reduce, it's not going to turn out well in the end. So this is what we are discussing as well, and trying to have a dialogue with our customers, because they are also requiring from us to show some reduction measurements. And if you take, for example, so I'm Swedish, so I speak for the Nordics, but here this has been a topic for many years. And with, for example, Swiss Post and La Poste, they are also kind of pioneers in this regard. But I'm really pleased to see now that also, as you mentioned, Jonathan, China is very well aware of this, or the USA. So it seems finally we've come to the point where the whole world is engaged. And I also think it's an interesting aspect to think about this circular economy and the circular market, with a reuse and repair and rent, etc. And I just read the other day about this in China, that it's becoming huge. And this is the young generation just asking for it.
But what's interesting to me is that even though the products are being reused or rented, it puts even more demand on having the best possible operational basis, because now, in the old days, it was send it to me, I'll send it back. Then it was send it to me in 17 different ways for no money, sustainably, in biodegradable packaging, and I'll send it back 20 different ways. Whereas now it's pick it up for me, wash it, clean it, check it, send it to somebody else. The complexities here are, it's great to see the model change, but it really does, I think, put the emphasis on operations. Now, Pia, you have introduced another topic for us, as Jonathan picked at, because you're Nordic and you're positive, which brings us on to the happiness index.
The happiness index.
Yeah.
So thank you for that segue. Jonathan, you're well known for your sunny disposition and positivity. Tell us why you've included this in the global report, and what can we take from it?
Thank you, as so often, for the preemptive irony there, Ian. Yeah, I've included it because I think previously, again, we thought this was a rather fuzzy thing, and then we thought in more detail about it. And it's, look, happy consumers or happy citizens are more likely to take rational decisions, are more likely to just be confident about what they're doing. And I thought it was important to try and gauge that. And it did produce some really interesting figures. I mean, Russia, for instance, people don't seem very cheerful. I can't imagine why. If you get to Norway, then all of a sudden, then people are very confident in their society. And it's very interesting, because I think it does impact deeply on consumer behavior. And I put also, just to put, as well as Europe's figures there, I put in Africa's as much as anything, just to show that, we can, this is being measured globally. And I think it's the kind of metric that's going to get more important in the future, especially is because there are limitations to things like GDP and so on in measuring how a country's doing.
Yeah. So there's consumer confidence, which is, am I going to keep my job? Will I get pay rises? Is food going to double in price, etc.? But this is specifically about happiness, not just being unafraid and, life isn't ending. So it's interesting, how do we correlate that with commercial impact? So if I wanted to start selling into Tanzania, is the fact that their happiness has increased by around 10% in 2 years, is that an opportunity for me or not? I mean, how are we interpreting this?
I think at the top level, I would be quite worried about selling into countries where the happiness index is declining, because I tend to think that means we're talking about the animal spirits of the market, aren't we? But at a kind of citizen level. So if people are feeling unconfident and worried, should you necessarily be choosing this year to launch into that market unless you've got a good reason? Whereas if people are feeling confident and as if things are going okay, then maybe that is a market that you should be looking at. And obviously, I'm aware that the caveat there is there are lots and lots of other things you would consider, but it's certainly something you should think about.
Pia, are you a fan of the happiness index? Is this something you would recommend we should be considering?
Yeah, well, it's nice. It's nice, of course, with happiness, but I also, it strikes me then that, again, coming back to the sustainability topic and all that, if people are happy, they shop. And in Sweden, we even have this expression that you can shop yourself happy, which is another dimension. But it has to come along with a responsible behavior in shopping, right? So we don't want to promote fast fashion necessarily and this overconsumption. So there's always this balance, I think. And if you think, you took Tanzania as an example, if you in general think about Africa, where the Gen Z is actually growing the most in the next decade, I would say, and they will have an increased internet coverage. Of course, they will also be able to shop more, but will this mean that they will be happier? It's so many factors to consider. But it could be potential good markets to explore. But again, I always think it's a bit of a struggle with this whole shopping urge that we have. But on the other hand, I mean, it has to take place for us, not the least, right? But preferably in a responsible manner. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And Jonathan, I like what you say also about thinking about launching a business there, because what we must never forget, of course, is that Gen Z, we consider them as buyers, young generation of buyers, but this is also the next generation of employees. So it means also that to launch a business, you need to make sure of employee experience. We really care about that also, and this is all about the balance, because they're also looking for meaning in their life, meaning in their job, in their purchase. And this is that balance that makes also happiness, to my opinion. So,
and they're also the next... Sorry, I was going to say, they're also the next generation of entrepreneurs and retailers, and let's not forget. When I took a holiday last year in London, and we were in Notting Hill, staying on the Portobello Road, one of the poshest bits of London. It was full of clothes shops selling secondhand clothes, because that's what the Gen Z customers who are wandering around that area want to buy. That's what they care about. Sometimes it just comes together like that, and you see it, and it's just fascinating.
You can't imagine the number of customers we have that are reappropriating the second hand, because they're so growing vintage kind of business, selling second hand, and they definitely want to have a second website to give a second life to the product. Definitely.
It's
in fact, we have
opportunity.
It is. We have a report coming up as well of the growth in people offering secondhand built in. So, for example, you now have rental as well as secondhand. So whether it's Moss Bros or LK Bennett in the UK, they're able to for a monthly fee, you can have a wardrobe you can keep for 1 month, 3 months, decide to keep forever or return. And John Lewis has just announced a children's rental as they grow. So you can rent it until the child grows out of it, return it, and they'll repair it and refurbish it and so on. So obviously, if you're a younger sibling, then you're going to miss out on your older siblings' clothes. But for those of us scarred by that experience, it's probably a good thing. So we've talked about happiness. I'm not sure if we can jump further from happiness, Jonathan, in your next trend you wanted to pull out, which is the metaverse. So are you telling us that because we're so happy, we're going to the metaverse makes us happy, or are you telling us something different? What can we draw from your assessment of the metaverse?
Well, obviously, I'd begin by just saying that's clearly how I spend my my leisure hours there, and that's my quite a lot about myself.
That's your flat.
Seriously. I've highlighted it because I think it's just a really interesting area. I'm not sure that as yet we've come to any firm conclusions. We've got a report coming up on the metaverse, and I think it's because it is a fascinating area. One of the world's richest men seems to have bet his company on it. What I did was, in the end, I approached it by commissioning it on a kind of for and against basis. I asked one of our writers, Cam Winstanley, who many, many years ago and a long-standing interest in games and was quite a senior games journalist. And his basic take on the metaverse was it's just a very, very easy way to get motion sickness. On the other hand, he was kind of thinking of that sort of 3D image of yes, doing video games. Paul Skeldon, who's our mobile editor and also our emerging technologies editor, essentially, he's much more positive. He thinks that we will all be shopping in the metaverse within a few years. I think the point that underlines this maybe is you just need to be aware of these new channels. You need to be thinking about how might I serve people who are shopping in the metaverse, just as over the last few years we've thought about marketplaces or live streaming, all of these kinds of digital ways of selling. You can overcomplicate them a bit. They are just new challenges at some level as well.
Yes. So Virginie, we're in the metaverse. We still need to know about product, services, information, so on. Are you a metaverse advocate, or is it just yet another digital channel to look at?
Yeah, for now, we just make sure that we can accompany and support our customers. The reality is that today, mostly the fashion, the luxury player are addressing the metaverse, like all the LVMH brands. They are trying like new games. You can buy stuff in metaverse and so on. But we definitely follow that as we expand more to, Saudi Arabia, Dubai. They have created like a complete department store in metaverse. So you can shop some of our customers already that way. So they are just sending product information to that channel. So yeah, in a way, we are already addressing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Pia, do you think that we need Asendia metaverse where avatars can deliver NFTs from one metaverse from Decentraland to another place?
God addresses NFTs or something, yeah. We are discussing this, of course. I mean, it would be ignorant not to, but as you say, is there a way to deliver stuff in metaverse? It's a huge challenge, obviously, because we are very fond of physical deliveries, right?
Yes.
But we are discussing also with our digital...
NFT.
Pardon?
I say if you launch Asendia NFT, remember, we need a 10% royalty.
Bespoke delivery solutions, yes. No, but it's on our radar, definitely. And we are working closely with our digital branches also within the company. As you say also, Virginie, that it has to be taken into consideration, right?
Yes. I think that's a very good way of putting it. We joke internally, because Paul, our mobile editor, we counted that we had 7 years where we said, this is the year of mobile. And then all of a sudden, we stopped saying it because everyone had a mobile and it had been and gone, and it's just integrated. So I think with all of these, you need to keep an eye on them. I think what's interesting for us and where we're looking at it in our report is not only looking at what people are doing with technologies, but there are some very radical changes that could come as a result of Web3 in the metaverse. The ideas of brutal, ruthless transparency that is, you don't just say it, you can prove it. So, blockchain type technologies. You've also got the issues around distributed ownership. So, in the media at the moment, we're talking a lot about, billionaire ownership of media platforms, of technology platforms. Whereas, the whole idea of Web3 is that you can have a distributed ownership and administration. And of course, the fundamental point is the commerce aspect around digital currencies, non-fiat. So I think those 3 enabling and necessary technologies will probably have a longer reaching impact on us all than whether we wear goggles or have, laser avatars. Of course, those have come, but I think we're in for, a decade of change there. So very exciting. Good. So as well as the metaverse, you highlighted, Jonathan, that very much as Pia mentioned, that delivery and all things to do with logistics have become a bit of a talking point from the board table, to the warehouse. So just tell us what you're looking at there.
Yeah, we've got our newest editor, Katie Searles. She's the RetailX editor, a total whirl of energy. She has been looking at the issues around global supply chains and delivery, both in the wake of the pandemic, obviously the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. So she's, just in practical terms, she's covering everything there from the use of delivery drones in Africa through to the effects of Brexit. So it's a really, really good and authoritative read. And I think that we also need to sort of think there about, we've talked a lot about sustainability and the customer experience. And I think that delivery and the way we handle products throughout their life is a really, really important part of that consumer experience. And that's what I'm getting coming through from everyone on this call, actually, that we need to think about this stuff.
Yeah. And Pia, when we were talking about this earlier on, one of the things you said that struck me was this idea of unifying experience and building an ecosystem. Just share with us what you were thinking about there as we look at delivery.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we look into the customer needs, as we mentioned before. So for them, it's not interesting whether you buy domestic goods or you buy from abroad. It has to be this seamless experience. And I think it's important that we as physical delivery partners team up, create ecosystems with other actors so that we can create this unified experience. And I just heard the other day the expression, it said, the future of retail is phygital, meaning, physical and digital in one. I think that was a nice expression. So the more the customer expresses their demands and needs, and you can buy online and then you can pick up in store and then you can return to a put point or whatever. This has to be customized, and we have to be on that train as well, as one major player in this whole value chain.
Virginie, I know you've been doing some research recently where you've been looking at consumers globally. I want you to share with us just a summary of those results and pick up on particular the brand values point. So maybe just tell us a bit about the research you've just done, and then I'll pull up one of the key finding slides around brand values.
Yeah, this is a survey, Jan, that we have been running for the second year. And we wanted to compare the results, but basically it just reinforces the importance of good product information first. And to Pia's point, returns also for companies are something that they really track, they care about, because they want to avoid a lot of returns. And we know that today, 30% of the returns could be avoided due to a lack of great product information. So this reinforces that. And the second point, Jan, indeed, is really that the importance of brand value, certificate, labels is really the number one top of the head of customers' researches. They want to immediately understand the impact again, and they don't want to have to look for that in a website, or even worse, going in store to make sure where the product have been built, manufactured, and so on. So as Pia said, phygital means reinforces the need for omnichannel. And we are talking a lot about e-commerce, but we must just remind that e-commerce is still a small part of the revenues of a company. Which companies are making more than 15% of their business with e-commerce? But we know this is important because this is really where we showcase the product. But probably they will end in a physical store to purchase.
Yeah.
So we must, again, ease that journey, make it seamless, and have a consistent experience, no matter the sales touch point. And this is important.
Now, in your research, one of the things that struck me was the importance about certificates and quality labels. Now, when we started looking at sustainability, we found 85, and there are many more, but we looked at 85 standards that affected retailers, from electricity use in warehouses, green roofs, carbon neutral buildings, etc., etc. So a phenomenal amount. How can retailers and brands keep up to date with the certification, proving they have it, and displaying? This sounds like a major undertaking.
First, it really depends on the industry, Jan. It won't be the same in food and cosmetics. It will be even more important in that kind of industry. And fashion, of course, because fashion has been known as one of the most polluting industry. So you will know that you will have to adapt to this industry, and you have now standards in each industry that you have to comply with. Otherwise, you won't compete. New standards are there, and we know them for each kind of industry. And if you want to be a good player, you have to embrace them.
Great. Well, look, being a good player is a perfect note on which to end. So we've covered a global view, but also drilled in on important things from sustainability to happiness. What a lovely topic, as well as, of course, the importance of showing our brand values and living them through the service we offer consumers. So if you're watching this in real life, then it's only a matter of minutes until you get the link to the lovely report. But thanks to recording, you may be looking at this in something that we in the trade call the future. And if you are in the future, then you will also be able to use these lovely QR codes and get your hands immediately on this mammoth report, which is just stuffed to the eyeballs with facts, figures, and insights on the key countries and the global regions. Plus, of course, if you're interested in the retailer performance, we have the global elite, the European top 1,000, and the individual country reports. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole, we are all there waiting to greet you with our bunny ears on. So do make sure you get your hands on the copy. There's so much in there. You're going to want to ask questions, give us your views, or disagree with us. We welcome that. Drop us a note, research@retailx.net, and that all ends up with Jonathan, where he can then answer them and dedicate his time to giving you that information. So I think that's it from the studio for today. We've been live, we've had dropouts, we've had pings. Apologies for that, is the way live recordings go. Thank you for bearing with us and lending us your time. But biggest thank yous, of course, to Pia, Virginie, and Jonathan. And with that, we'll say a massive thank you again and wish you all happy trading.
Thank you, Jan.
Thank you so much.
Ian.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.